Okay, welcome to the last couple of images that we need to complete chapter 10 in Western art. So we are looking at a page from a manuscript. Um, the minor arts that we're going to look at here at the end of the chapter refers to artwork in its size, not at all in terms of its importance. So in this case, we are looking at written text, but it would also include things like jewelry, metalwork, pieces done in ivory or cameos. These were created by people with very skilled craft technique, and often people with high status. So what you are looking at also is the evolution of the codex. Around the end of the 1st century, you have this new method of binding paper, in this case what would have been parchment, made from sheep or goat skin, or vellum, which is from calf skin, as a material for a page in a book. You can see here where the binding of the book would have been. This is in contrast to the rhodolus. This is something that was a scroll, typically of papyrus, and this is the item that the codex replaces. So the codex would have been as long as 30 feet, and you can imagine how complicated that could be for handling illustrations. Now, when you have an individual page, just like we have in the book today, you have a much easier material to handle for illustrations. So the earliest illustrated books come from the Egyptians, for instance, the Book of the Dead, which you remember we talked about. And the oldest Roman codex dates back to about the 4th or 5th century. So again, we are looking at the ancestor of the modern book. Papyrus scrolls have held around for a very, very long time. It's more brittle than parchment, but of course, many of these things have been passed down over the centuries as very early forms of text. So some of the very early codices that we have to look at tell us stories from the Bible. So the Vienna Genesis, and its name comes from where it's located today. The Vienna Genesis is basically an Old Testament. And so within you have text that is taking up the top part of the page, and at the lower half, they were able to include an image. The purple color is something that suggests that it was from an imperial patron. And then what was typical of the Byzantine era would be to have text written in gold or silver. And what you see in the image, both in this page and in this page, is a continuous narrative. So in this one bit of space at the bottom of the page, they would tell several parts of a story that would be taking place. This idea of illustration, another word for it, comes from Latin, illuminare. So when we talk in the coming chapters about illuminated manuscripts, that is where the term comes from, Latin for illuminare, and it has to do with adorning or ornamenting something or to brighten it. And in these early images, again, you have stories from the Bible. So the one on the left about Rebecca, this has to do with a woman who is out by a well, and Abraham has sent his son Isaac out to gather water, and he has prayed to God for the first person who comes to assist the servant to get water for the camels, that this must be divine intervention, as meant to be the wife for his son. So you see where she has departed in the background, she's going out to where the well is, she's walking here, and then obviously here, this is where she's meeting up with the servant to help with water for the camels. So multiple scenes in multiple parts of the narrative in one scene. Same thing here, where you have elements of the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife. So Joseph is someone who had been sold into slavery by his brothers, and he's actually sold to an Egyptian household. So very different culturally in terms of Joseph as an Israelite being sold into an Egyptian household. And the wife, of this Egyptian, Potiphar, has begun to make advances on him. And he here is turning away and refusing her. So again, multiple parts of this narrative on the same bottom half of the page. And this is just to enlighten you of some other examples. The Ashburnham Pentateuch. So we're looking here as a full page illustration here, but still in miniature, late 6th century. This is one of, again, the oldest illustrated biblical manuscripts. Its origins are a bit ambiguous, but research points it towards Italy. And you have here very wide margins left on the side of the page where they could organize the text into 2 columns. This is something that was probably used for studying. And again, you have multiple parts of an episode squeezed into one frame on the page. So in this, it's full of contemporary Christian symbols. And here, what you have is the illustration of the flood. And in the back, you have something that is like the ark. In the foreground, you see people of different sizes. So the smaller individuals are actually human, and the larger figures are mythical, sinful giants. And so they are really struggling to survive underwater. And obviously, there's also the animation of people and animals surrounding them. So there's some elements of Greek proportion within the figures. There's some details in the costumes and plants that show observation. So some of these artists, what you'll notice is that they're holding on to some Greek or Roman traditions with regard to being truthful and having detail, but they also recognize the need for symbolism as being primary in the kind of works that they're creating. This is the earliest preserved illuminated manuscript with illustrations from the New Testament. We are looking at the Rosanna Gospels, also from around the 6th century. And here, this is Pilate at the top, and he is presiding over a tribunal which is demanding the death of Christ. And even in the shape of the figures here, look at them pointing and gesturing at Christ and Pilate. Look at the expression on his face. So they stand in this arc-like shape that even makes the suggestion of an apse in the background. Those are just the last few images, again, to give you a feeling for the idea of late developments in the Byzantine era and the idea of the codex. So hopefully this gives you everything that you need to review and prepare for Chapter 10. Thank you.